How long have the mysterious shadow people been with us? How about forever? Welcome, Friday Night Ghost Frights from Haunted Road Media. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. Explore with us. Shadow people have been with us throughout all of history, yet since I wrote an extensive book on the topic, I'll get asked if the shadow people moniker is just a contemporary term or phenomenon. The term shadow person has been with us for a long time, and I don't just mean back during the 1980s when it was used to describe illegal immigrants pouring into China, or the type of vulnerable people a woman murdered to claim their social security money, or simply the old slang term for people who work behind the scenes. Supernatural shadow people historically predate the modern internet sensationalism of these entities, predate the 1969 book The Shadow People by Margaret St. Clair, and predate other artwork, short stories, and folklore about shadow people over the last 100 years. Shadow people was a term used during the Spiritualism movement of the 1800s. English medium Madame d'Esperance stated she grew up in a haunted house in the 1860s and was actually protected from ghosts by shadows, stating, "I was horridly afraid of ghosts. I didn't know what they were, but all the same I was afraid of them, afraid to move from one room to another without my shadow friends for company." Her opinion of shadow people seemed to change as a young adult, as she described, "Some years later, when I had exchanged the busy, occupied life of eldest daughter in a large family for that of a young wife, for whom several hours a day was left to her own company, I was horrified to find the shadow people reappear, and I began to be tormented by the fear of a diseased brain. I never spoke of these strange visions. I was too much afraid of people thinking me mad." While some of Madame d'Esperance's parlor tricks may have been fraudulent, the shadow people she witnessed were seldom disputed since, well, many others have also experienced shadow entities. Shadow people go back even further than the Spiritualism movement, however. They go back to time immemorial. Perhaps the earliest recording of shadow person activity comes in the form of a Sumerian demon named Alu. Alu has no visible features, no mouth, no eyes, no nose, no ears, typical of a shadow person. It doesn't even have limbs, yet it terrorizes people as it hovers over them. In a description that resembles sleep paralysis, it binds a victim's body, including his or her tongue, with the intent to take possession. In his The Mythology of All Races Semitic in 1916, Assyriologist Stephen Herbert Langdon cited a translation of a cuneiform script by Major General Sir H.C. Rawlinson. "Whom in his bed the wicked Alu covered, whom the wicked ghost by night overwhelmed." According to ancient Akkadian and Sumerian mythology, Alu is supposed to be a vengeful spirit of the Udug, later Utuku, an ambiguous class of demons that were sometimes thought of as good and sometimes as evil. A good demon may seem rather strange in our modern concept of demonology, but back then, a good Udug would be invoked to combat a bad Udug. These invocations were used as a type of medical treatment since many diseases and afflictions of the day were considered demonic in nature and attributed to the hand of a ghost. Another one of the earliest recordings of shadow entities comes from the ancient Egyptian Kabit, one of the 7 parts of a person's soul. This part of the soul was considered the shadow, the piece that remained here on earth in hidden places after a person's death. Ancient Egyptian beliefs about the human soul are extremely extensive since, according to Sir E.A. Wallace Budge, the former keeper of Egyptian antiquities at the British Museum, the Egyptians believed humans had more than one soul. These souls were all separate from each other and had different functions, but they were all connected to each other through the human body, or the Khat. At death, the spiritual aspect of these souls ascends to the stars to begin the next stage of its journey in the constellation of Orion. But the animating force behind the body is said to remain on Earth with the corpse. This force is supposed to be a combination of the Ka, double, and Kabit, shadow. One can already start to see the supernatural implications of parts of a soul left on Earth to roam. From the book of What is in the Duat, or the Amduat, one of the ancient Egyptian funerary texts. Let thy soul be in heaven, let thy shadow penetrate the hidden place, and let thy body be to earth. Several Native American tribes also believe in a similar concept, including the Choctaw, who state that humans have two souls. These include the Shllombish, the outside shadow, and the Shlup, the inside shadow, or ghost, which at death goes to the land of the ghosts. The Shllombish remains on earth. These cultures aren't the only ones who had similar beliefs concerning the shadow realm. Scores of cultures from all over the world had similar beliefs concerning the shadow phenomenon known as Old Hag Syndrome. Old Hag Syndrome occurs when one wakes in the night to the visage of an old woman or a ghoul sitting on his or her chest. There is a degree of sleep paralysis associated with this phenomenon in that the victim feels as if the entity is pressing down on his or her chest, creating at least partial and in many cases complete paralysis. It is from this which originates the term hag-ridden, the disheveled state of a person waking in the morning after a restless sleep and feeling more exhausted than when he or she first lied down. Imagine feeling hungover when not having had a drop to drink the night before. Hag riding was also a term used in more contemporary times, but still as far back as the 1700s, to describe men being visited by horses or hags while they slept alone, according to old Germanic tales regarding demons and witches during the night. In 1782, Henry Fuseli revealed his famous painting, The Nightmare, which depicts a sleeping woman stretched out with an incubus or a ghoul sitting on her chest while a black horse looks on. It's believed Fuseli suffered from waking nightmares in which he experienced something similar to the old hag, but it was also rumored he ate pork before going to bed in order to stimulate his dark dreams. It's difficult to know the truth of the matter, but Fuseli would go on to paint and draw different variations of the nightmare for the next 15 years. The following list is a small sample of legends and folklore from around the world concerning the shadow phenomenon known as Old Hag Syndrome, and is by no means all-inclusive. It's just meant to give you an idea of what multiple cultures have had to say about it for millennia. Vietnam, Bong Day, held down by shadow. Pakistan, Shaitan, phenomena is believed to be caused by an evil jinn or demon who is taking over a person's body. Persian culture, Baktak, ghost-like entity who sits on the chest of a sleeping person. Turkey, Karabasan, the dark presser, a type of evil spirit. China, Guyashin, ghost pressing on body or ghost pressing on bed. Ethiopia, Dukak, literally means depression, but also the name of an evil spirit that possesses people during their sleep. Swahili-speaking areas of Southeast Africa. Jinamizi, strangled by jinn, or a creature sitting on one's chest, making it difficult to breathe. Sardinia, a Mutadori, demon who sits on the chest of a sleeping victim, sometimes ripping the person's skin off with its nails. Scandinavian folklore, mare, evil female entity which rides on people's chests while they sleep. An alternative, Mara, are said to be the souls of damned living women pulled from their bodies at night to ride the chests of other villagers. Brazil, Pisadira, tall, skinny old woman with white tangled hair who steps on the chests of those who sleep with a full stomach. Tibetan culture, Dippak, oppressed by dip, dip literally meaning shadow and referring to a type of spiritual pollution. And on and on. What I find amazing is that there are so many cultures across the world, many of which who never had any contact with each other for thousands of years, and yet they're all essentially describing the same thing. They all came to the same conclusions about it. And none of them deduced that it was a hallucination, which is what the medical community likes to say about shadow people. How is the Brazilian Pisadira so much the same as the Scandinavian mare, which is essentially the description of the Persian Baktak, if they are not really the same type of entity? Surely a person in Rio de Janeiro from 1642 wasn't sharing the same hallucination or experiencing group psychosis with a person in Persepolis in 510 BC. That these experiences happen to individual people for thousands of years in all parts of the world is quite compelling. Of course, with all of these accounts, there's a certain amount of storytelling woven within it, so Where does the folklore end and the real experiences of shadow people begin? And for more information about shadow people, please check out our other videos off to the side. I'm Mike Ricksecker. Until next Friday night,